Welcome to Have You Seen This? The podcast about obscure, overlooked, and misbegotten cinema. All discussions will be spoiler heavy. You have been warned.
Welcome to Have You Seen This? I'm Jennifer Albright.
And I'm Tim Heidrich.
And we're broadcasting live from Silver Lake in the most baller mansion I've ever been in.
Yes,
Chapo
it's
Trap House
Chapo
West Side.
Trap House Mansion West.
It's Chapo West, baby.
Yep.
All
It's our most Michael Mann experience. We get to look out onto the reservoir and plan our next move as operators and professionals and the criminal lifestyle.
And just wonder what it's all about.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
like, what am I really fighting for? What am I really chasing?
We've
It's
just
good.
done some fucking fat rails.
Yes, we're zooted to the gills right now.
Chasing the dragon.
Yeah, we are taking
Oh,
a
Christ.
Bolivian march.
And if you haven't guessed, our guest this week is Matt Christman of Chapo Trap House. Hi, Matt. How
Hi.
you doing?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Thanks for coming on the show.
My pleasure as always.
Tim, do you want to give us this week's topic?
Yeah, this week's topic was inspired by a few episodes ago. We had Matt on for Mad Dog Time, which is probably the worst movie that we've seen. And from there, we got talking about other sort of ill-advised, hip 90s movies. And from there, we ended up deciding to do an episode about Tarantino knockoffs.
Yeah, because this was that was like a formative experience for me, was seeing those movies, those early Tarantino movies, Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, and having them basically take over my mind. Be like, now I know what cool means. I have a visual representation of everything that I think is cool, and it all comes from this. And so I just sought everything that looked like that. So I ended up watching every one of these things. I saw one that had those elements of coolness that I identified in the Tarantino movies. I went after them.
A voracious consumer of cool,
Oh, yeah. I would be like, I got to rent these as soon as possible. And I would watch them. And it got to the point where I felt like I was going to be a screenwriter. And I tried to write, when I was a teenager, a script. And it was going to be a fractured narrative of a bunch of criminals coming together to do crimes and stuff.
All the best tropes.
Honestly,
yeah.
if you just had the connections, you could have fucking got that made. Because some of the shit that I watched for this episode,
Oh God, yeah. It was. Well, that's the thing. Is that all Hollywood knows is what is popular at the very moment, and so all you have to do is know what buttons to push. And I'm sure people said, "Hitman, ooh, Hitman, yes, sassy criminals and swears." Pop music, ironically counterposed with violence. And they're like, yes, we know the audience likes this. This is all greenlit.
Yeah,
you guys,
let's
this
take
band's
one
called
element.
the Butthole Surfers. Isn't that the craziest thing you've ever heard?
It's got butt right in the name.
It says butt right there. Yeah, like, this is a very interesting thing about these movies. And maybe it'll provide a little intro for one of the films that we're going to talk about.
Sure. No, we should start with the end of it, and then we'll cut in the beginning, and then the audience will be like,
Yes,
oh.
you can never start a movie where it begins. That's a chump move. That's
Yeah.
not cool.
That's chump. I apologize in advance for the 45-minute drug trip that will be taking place in the
Yeah.
middle of this episode.
Oh, so you want to start talking about Killing Zoe then? Let's kill Zoe.
By the
and
way,
then put it to
I
bed.
must say, I'm glad I'm going to be out of California when this posts, because if Roger Avery heard us calling him a Tarantino ripper offer, he would probably murder us.
Yeah, dude, I live in fucking Ventura County. I'm toast.
Yeah. Oh well,
Like, I'm going to become a martyr for podcasting.
it's the price you pay for
What?
speaking truth to power.
What have I made of my life? I swear to God.
I think this is going to be it. You're going to end up a footnote in a Wikipedia article.
But yeah, anyway, so this week we'll be talking about Roger Avery's Killing Zoe.
Yeah.
We'll also be talking about an early episode of Love American Style, Love in the 45. No, actually, it is. Oh shit, what's the guy's name? He has some stupid ass name.
I do not remember.
The star of
No, the guy who wrote it. Cunty McGee or whatever his name is.
Yeah, it's some garbage, some gibberish. I don't remember.
Let me actually fucking look it up.
That's the thing is because there were. Like Matt, you had no shortage of movies
my
to
list
list.
was long.
The problem though is that there are ones that we remember seeing 20 years ago, but they're nigh impossible to find now.
Yeah.
Short of going to like Cinephile or your local video VHS store.
I wonder how. I mean, like for example, one that was very formative for me never actually got a theatrical release. A lot of these are that way actually, but it was featured heavily on premium cable. And I watched it on HBO a bunch called The Immortals.
I haven't seen that one.
Eric Roberts, Tony Curtis in their sort of fossil era.
Eric Roberts, the seal of quality.
And then starring Joey Pants, Joe Padagliano, I think Tia Carrera. And the premise is the crime boss recruits a bunch of people with terminal illnesses to do a bank robbery. That's the premise. No. So it's out. You got irony already. They're the Immortals, but they're actually all dying.
But I mean, any jail term that they would do from that heist would be a life sentence.
Yeah, but the idea is they don't have a lot of time left, so they're kind of expendable. You don't have to worry about them.
Wouldn't those people just be absolutely decrepit? And
you'd think, but they were pretty robust in the movie. They all had they all had very rare diseases. It's like, yes, I'm at death's door, but also I have all my musculature. I'm not crippled with pain. I have full range of motion and acuity and all these things that would be very unlikely if I was near death. It's one of those very rare diseases where you just drop dead.
It's kind of a D&D disease where it's like, I'm perfectly healthy until I hit 0
So
HP.
I'm sure you guys haven't seen The Immortals, and I don't know where you would find it. Maybe some of those old HBO style movies are on YouTube, maybe, but that's it.
Yeah.
Here's a theme that appears to pop up in these movies frequently: is doing heists with the absolute worst people possible to do a heist with.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing is, and this is a trope that Tarantino used in Reservoir Dogs. Maybe one person's a cop, but also one person is some sort of obvious psychopath.
You can't work with no fucking psycho.
Yeah, and but there's always a guy who's on the team who you immediately think, oh, he's going to do something depraved and horrible and throw the whole thing out of whack, and that's exactly what would happen. Like,
or for example, your comrades spend the entire night doing heroin.
Yeah.
Before a heist that you haven't really planned.
Yeah, I mean, not
because you got there like the day before.
Like not vetting people that you're working with, and I mean, like this, bad things are going to happen. But why would I mention that in an era of Uber and Airbnb and whatnot? Where you're just interacting with strangers that you've only just met.
Yeah, that movie, Killing Zoe, it really is like a bunch of guys at a youth hostel decided to do a bank robbery. Like they met in the common room and they had some absinthe and then they're like, let's go rob that bank.
Let's go steal that ATM.
Yeah.
Also, I literally think that the ringleader had AIDS-related dementia.
Could be. Or just
and I'm not being
dementia.
on PC. Like he says in the movie that he fucking has AIDS.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
not
so
HIV.
weird.
He's not
It's like,
living with the
hello,
virus.
I am the criminel de français. I have l'AIDS. It is very bad l'AIDS. I must get all of this money. So for some reason, I don't know, I'm almost dead. I have the AIDS.
He could have been one of the Immortals.
Yeah, they could have brought him in to the sequel.
Yeah.
I wish they'd made that.
I have the AIDS. Do you want to share this needle?
I think it's part of that.
Your open mouth?
I think it's just sort of that '90s wave of nihilism.
Yeah,
People
it's
do
very
it.
nihilist.
Crime movies where the premise is people just do them to do them because of their alienation. So even though you're dying of AIDS, you just want to be as antisocial as possible.
Yeah, that's literally one of the themes that Avery mentioned as part of Killing Zoe is nihilism. And he's like, oh, well, the name Zoe means life. So it's like you're killing life.
Except, spoilers, she doesn't die.
Can
Zoe does not get killed.
Can I just say this movie's a fucking pile? I hated it.
Sucks.
I didn't think Love in a 45 was that bad. Maybe because I was expecting it to just be trash. But I was like, this is really silly and very much of its time. But it's like, I'm like kind of entertained by it.
I know that
It's
Love in the 45.
fun.
The thing that is both repellent and a kind of endearing about Love in a 45 is that it's so thoroughly rockabilly.
Ooh, yeah.
You know, it's like a
shit, we should have
rockabilly
Felix
movie.
on.
Yeah, he
I
would
know
hate
he
this
loves
movie.
rockabilly.
He would
yeah.
fucking hate this
You've
movie.
got Reverend
But
Horton
the whole
Heat in a
thing, like,
cameo.
and that's like, and they've got like the obvious bad 50s retro green screens with the cars rocking. They're clearly evoking 50s tropes. So that movie is like, oh, it's rockabilly, but also, oh, it's kind of cute. It's rockabilly. Killing Zoe is just like everybody, just these shitty Euro trash dickheads being like, grinding Galwa out into the fucking celluloid. It's fuck yeah. Whereas it's like, hey everybody, we're gonna do a little old Tarantino style noir action thriller. Yeehaw! Brian Setzer Orchestra presents Love in a 45.
Well, yeah, the thing about Killing Zoe, too, is that after you watch it, you're like, oh, I see why the French have a reputation for just being utterly insufferable.
Yeah.
Because
it's like, I wouldn't want to spend a minute with any of those characters.
Yeah, I know.
And they're screaming at each other in the tight confines for the whole movie.
The other thing, too, like the really bad thing, the really bad takeaway from it is that, yeah, this predates like Reservoir Dogs and Tarantino and like a lot of the a lot of those like endless pop culture diatribes, because again, it's like them on heroin all of a sudden really energetic for some reason, which I didn't think heroin did that, but like they're talking about obscure episodes of like The Prisoner and like all these other like
They
sort of
talked about The Prisoner?
Yeah, they talked about because they're like, oh, and then like number 6 like goes to meet number 2, and he finds out that he's number 1, and we're like prisoners of ourselves. But really, the best episode is A, B, and C because he like takes 3 different drugs and just like.
Wow, I really love retreads of the kind of discussions of media I had in fucking college.
Well, that's the thing too, is like we're seeing like the birth of hipsterdom about like this like deep, narrow understanding of just some obscure topic.
Yeah, like, well, let's kind of put these in their proper context. Killing Zoe was 1994,
Right.
which is post Reservoir Dogs.
Oh,
Reservoir Dogs was
post-Reservoir Dogs.
1992.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this is an interesting thing about Love in a 45, and which actually kind of makes me feel bad for the filmmaker whose name is Canty Talkington.
What? Canty? That's not a real name.
It sure doesn't Robert
Apparently it is
Warmflesh?
because he has a sister with the same last name. And unless they're pulling like a huge goof on everyone, like, yeah.
This is like he was somebody who was in witness protection program and just decided on a whim to become a director, and they gave him money, and then they're saying, we need your name for the poster. And he says, it's Canty Talkington.
Remember, I'm not a snitch, so like can't talk. But turn that into a name. I don't know.
He saw a horse cantering by, and then he was like, that's it.
Awful.
Yeah, so Mr. Funny Name, I do legitimately feel bad for him because having read a couple of interviews with him, apparently he was writing his script for Love in a 45 in, as early as like 90 or 91.
Yeah.
And then when it was making the rounds, people were saying, wow, this really reminds me of Quentin Tarantino. And he's like, who the fuck is Quentin Tarantino?
Oh, that would suck.
And they met at the Cannes Film Festival.
Uh-huh.
And Tarantino was like, dude, I loved your movie. Like, it was great. And, like, apparently Tarantino still evokes this movie periodically. Saying, like, hey, of all the... And he, with affection says, of all the people who ripped me off, like, this guy was pretty good.
Yeah.
But
he's like, motherfucker, I didn't rip you off. It's just a fucking coincidence.
Yeah, because...
You son of a bitch.
That's what I find interesting is that... and I know that, our episode is Tarantino ripoffs, but it's also the things that were in the zeitgeist that led people to write these kind of movies.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
like, do you guys have...
Tarantino also rans, maybe, as being more fair.
I mean, do you guys have any thoughts on what was in the culture that kind of led us to this huge streak of, like, kind of like nihilistic, witty heist movies?
Yeah, and I think it is that... We were talking the other night about how the 90s were this false dawn of neoliberal consensus where it really felt like the end of history. Mm-hmm. It felt like God was dead, the market was everything, humans had become totally commodified or would in the future, and that was not only unavoidable, it was also preferable, and this is just the future we have and going out forever in a steady state.
Would you say that reality bites?
Indeed, and the thing is that's what's the thing. That sort of totalizing hegemonic world is dispiriting, and people feel like, well, what's the point of living in this? What am I doing? I'm just enacting a predetermined script.
A human doing.
I have no agency. I am just matter, just ping ponging into a void.
Yeah.
Hence
They
the
can
rise
never
of,
they can never have value ascribed to it, because we've destroyed all values and all judgments.
hence the rise of the anti-hero.
Yeah, and so you're like, fuck that, and then your response is to embrace a violent nihilism that seeks to obliterate the comfort and fake security of that false utopia. It's like you're suicide bombing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like a world weary, wisecracking killer would be the perfect emblematic hero for that kind of rebellion to a status quo.
So
But it's
who
funny because
kind of brings
it's-
like an excessive amount of character rather than trying to like define themselves into like what everyone else is expecting. Like,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and let's not also forget, like, these were literally all written by these disaffected young males who probably sought solace in media, you know,
Right.
because they were, like creative people. You know, they spent a lot of time like forming opinions and discussing like popular culture, because none of us can fucking escape that, but they were also kind of disaffected, and they also like romanticized this like notion of the anti-hero.
Yeah,
Because
that's
the
the thing is that trajectory intersects with a very real a concept of masculinity. Like they have to the heroes of the time have to embody what the fuck was I saying?
Embodies a kind of masculinity.
I forgot.
Oh, okay.
Never mind.
Like the mass.
All
Well, like, if we're talking about like anti-heroes,
Well, I mean, again, if you want to talk about like the Reality Bites thing, where there's was it Ethan Hawke versus Ben
Stiller, yeah.
Yeah, although like people will watch it now and be like, yeah, she should have gone with Ben Stiller. Like, he had a good job and a comfortable life.
oh, because he's the boring one, and
Well, he's Ben Stiller, of course.
Ethan Hawke is the bad boy.
Yeah, he had a
Right.
scruffy beard and everything.
Yeah, because bitches like that.
Right. Yeah. So.
But yeah, like.
But again, it's kind of like how like you read The Fountainhead as a kid and you're like, oh, this is so true, and you read it as an adult, you're like, this is insufferable.
Well, it's it is also like a very like adolescent male kind of perspective,
Right.
and this is something which is like obviously as like a conservative teenage girl like growing up in fucking Thousand Oaks, California.
Well, you would be the expert, yeah.
Yeah, well, this is a world which was like alien to me, but also like kind of enticing because it
Yeah.
was so removed from my experience. And I'm sure like for a lot of these guys who probably like never knocked over a liquor store in their fucking life,
Right.
it
Well,
also
most
was
of them
very
probably had never
enticing.
even seen guns.
Also
Yeah,
true.
It did have kind of, I mean, speaking for myself, it would have had an appeal to like a cloistered suburban white, teenage kid who hasn't seen much of the world, which is why, again, like Jen was watching Killing Zoe and just like hating it. But the thing that you have to keep in mind is like, watch it from the perspective of like a 15-year-old kid who's never seen anything like this.
Well, yeah, because and I think I mentioned it on the last episode that Matt was on.
Yeah.
My high school friend and I thought Reservoir Dogs was like the best movie ever made, and we were like these two little girl nerds.
Yeah.
In Thousand Oaks, we're like, oh my god, this movie's so awesome. It's got blood, it's got guns, it's got cussing, it's got Tim Roth. It's amazing.
And there's a diversion where a guy tells this long-winded story about this one thing that happened to him that's completely incidental to the plot, which also happens in Killing Zoe. Like, where they're bored during the heist, and the guy's telling that, like, long-winded joke about the guy obsessed with women's belly buttons, and he
Yeah.
goes to the whorehouse.
Yeah.
And again, it's one of those things that has nothing to it, but it's just, like, it's this bit of, like, I guess, like, flavor text or character or something.
Flavor of a navel.
Yeah, oh. But yeah, so they do that in Killing Zoe, they do that in Reservoir Dogs, and it's this sort of thing where I don't know what the purpose of it is, other than to be like, let's just let this character riff, I guess.
Well, this is one thing that watching these movies actually made me appreciate Tarantino more. And
Okay.
I was certainly a fan in high school, which is a good time to be a fan of Tarantino.
Yeah.
I became less of a fan as time went on, but not in a way like, oh, he sucks, like, just like, it's not necessarily my flavor.
I became less of a fan around the double feature that he did with
Planet
No.
Grindhouse.
Grindhouse.
Yeah. Oh my God, what was that? But that's what we're getting.
I really
topic.
enjoyed Grindhouse.
Oh, okay.
I've never not enjoyed a Tarantino movie. I'll admit it.
I enjoyed the trailers in the middle. The rest of it, I could take or leave.
Well, this is the thing about Tarantino. Like, even myself not being like a fan of him, I like appreciated what he was doing. It's like, like you can say that you don't like him, but he's like, a good screenwriter. He has a singular vision. Like, he's a good director. But now, like, watching these movies and they're kind of like attempts at wit.
Yeah.
Because Tarantino, like, people really like. I like dialogue.
Like overwritten
movies.
dialogue.
Yeah, like when it's done well, it's just like it's like reading Dune. It's like an inch thick, but like you're still like, fuck yeah, this is cool. Like
says you.
All of like Tarantino's little incidental asides and like kind of character flourishes. It's like those are really good, and it takes real skill to write those, which is proved in particular by Killing Zoe, because as much as the characters spend all this time flapping their fucking lips, like the only feel that you get is like, okay, this guy Eric, the French guy, is a sociopath. Like, I could have told you that from the minute he walked on screen and threw fucking Julie Delpy out of the hotel room.
Right.
And Eric Stoltz's character, complete cipher.
Well,
he's a safecracker.
He's the plot device. He's there to move things along. He's there to move the story along. Yeah, he's the MacGuffin.
And I mean, I'm used to like female characters being like just incredibly underwritten, but like all the characters are underwritten in this movie.
Yeah, well, what do you want? I don't know.
But so, the point is that watching this make go like, wow, like I understand why Tarantino is the gold standard, because when he does this stuff, he actually does it really well.
Well, I think I just realized what Tarantino does is he balances two different strains, overlapping strains of, I guess, I don't know, 90s specific cultural pathology. And he emulsifies them in a perfect balance, and basically all of the other movies, to some degree or another, miss the balance and go either one direction or the other with these pathologies. One of them is what we were talking about earlier, that sort of proto-nihilistic response to 90s false utopia. It's like an intentionally retro-seeming rebellion, like a 50s style, it's self-consciously retro, like that's the rockabilly part. It's it's a louche aesthetic, almost continental rejection of mores, but with that, he balances it perfectly with the other thing, which is the pent-up male aggression, the fascist will to violence that was percolating under America's masculinity at that point, which you saw burst out in things like Woodstock 99 and all those like angry songs for like white boys who had no reason to be pissed but were super mad because their natural like aggression was being tamped. And that all like that ended up being this huge backed up gland that got expressed on 9/11 and just shot violence all over the world because of that pent up thing. And the 90s is about pent up male aggression,
global cum shot.
And so Tarantino's movies balance those two pathological strains of 90s culture in a perfect way. And the movies that don't work are either are one too much or one or the other. And then there are some that are only one. And so on the one hand, you have a movie that's almost basically just that part of Tarantino, the louche, rebellious stuff, the retro stuff. If it was just that, it would be Love in a 45. And if you took the fascist will to violence, the male domination power fantasy that also powers him, that would be Boondock Saints. That movie is just pure, the worst rancid masculine violence of it turned into its own movie. Just like Love in a 45 is the other one. And then they're all somewhere on this scale. And then the ones in the middle where they meet and are perfectly aligned, like an eclipse, those are the actual Tarantino movies.
Right. Yeah. And it provides like a good balance without being kind of too much one thing or too much of the other. I hadn't seen Boondock Saints until fairly recently, and even that because I know it was hyped up. There's like that documentary about the
Overnight. That's a great movie.
Oh my
yeah,
God. Can I just point out that Troy Duffy is an asshole even by the standards of
Amazing.
people from Boston?
There's a scene in that movie where after he's kind of gotten put through the ringer and they're burying Boondock Saints, and he might never get to be able to direct another movie. He goes to, I think, the Boston College or something film department to do a little seminar with a bunch of aspiring filmmakers, and he just says to them outright, give up. You will never succeed. You need to get out of this while you still can. You're going to waste your lives.
To be fair, I wish I'd heard that at UCLA Film School.
Yeah, you had to find out the hard way.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's a great movie.
That is, I would wholeheartedly recommend Overnight, like without question.
Yeah.
I would not recommend Boondocks.
Boondock Saints
No,
is
yeah.
punishing. Like, a lot of these movies can be fun, even if they're not good, or at least breezy. It is so lugubrious and just these painfully overwritten attempts at humor that just feel so desperate and over the top. The affectations that feel like such obvious affectations, like Willem Dafoe's gay, theatrical police officer. And then the fact that when they finally start killing people, there isn't even really any action. It's just these slow motion shots of these guys getting riddled with bullets while opera blares in the soundtrack, which is such an adolescent dipshit thing of like, well, what would make it sound badass and serious? Opera music.
Yeah,
it's just like a kid. It's just juvenile shit.
Juvenile,
and
being
shit,
the key
that
word.
shit was done like a couple of years after Bonnie and Clyde.
Yeah, that's
like
true.
Bonnie and Clyde set the standard. It's like, okay, do something else.
We've had our excess of violence.
like
now
balletic,
what new can you
like
bring?
slow-mo
Yeah.
violence is trite.
Yeah.
Like, for example, a movie that is not necessarily successful and tries too hard in some ways, Way of the Gun. When it comes to the action scenes, they fucking rip. That movie, the big shootout that ends that movie, whips sack.
No, yeah,
it's
that
great.
movie has a ton of good action. in
Yeah,
it.
whereas Boondock Saints, it's like the scenes are almost avant-gardely uninteresting and unsuspenseful.
I feel like a lot of these guys were helped by the influx of Hong Kong cinema. John Woo movies in particular, because John Woo being the the obvious king of beautiful gun violence.
Right.
You just said that, and then a flock of doves exploded behind you in slow motion.
And it's funny because like a lot of these these 90s like kind of like violent heist or criminal movies, and it's like whatever, jerk off motion.
Yeah.
I fucking love John Woo movies. I love Hong Kong movies about like triad.
Oh yeah,
I
absorb that shit. I fucking watched Hard Boiled, fucking
Yeah.
The Killer, Better Tomorrow. I watched all that shit. I remember when I first saw Hard Boiled, and they go into the hospital at the end.
Yeah.
And they're just like, that one guy just machine guns a room full of old people and people in wheelchairs and pregnant women. And he just, like, holy shit.
Doesn't a baby pee out a little fire in that?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
That was I saw that first as a double feature. It was Hard Boiled and The Killer.
Yeah.
They never really got
Tight.
it. They never really got him in Hollywood. They never really made it work.
No, they even tried to import Chow Yun-fat, and they failed him.
Face Off is the closest he got, and I still think it's mostly a failure, even though it's very entertaining.
Yeah. People love that movie, but I have to confess, I just thought it was dumb.
Well, it is incredibly stupid. It's
Yeah. It's a
it's
summer movie,
mind-numbingly stupid.
Yeah.
It's just a hair's breadth away from The Rock, I feel.
But it was an early indicator of the kind of gifts that Nicolas Cage would give us as an actor.
Yes, when he's like touching the ass wearing his priest's costume.
But anyway, kind of circling back to our, we can call it like our trio of choices.
Yeah.
Boondock Saints, Killing Zoe, and 11 to 45.
Right. I did also want to say, like, Way of the Gun, that starts with, like, Sarah Silverman does like a diatribe. That's
Sarah Silverman screams.
That was Way of the Gun?
Sarah Silverman screams, "Do you fuck baby heads?" at Benicio del Toro.
Yeah.
And Ryan Fleet for 5 minutes, and then Ryan Fleet punches her in the face.
Yeah.
It's just violence against women. That's the whole punchline.
Like,
what
what's gonna what
it's
kind of
just
movie
her
you're getting
being
into.
it's her being incredibly irritating.
Yeah.
And then him punching her, and that's the joke. That he punched the annoying lady who wouldn't stop yapping.
That appears to be...
This is what you're getting.
It was a little more of a theme in Killing Zoe, was just kind of misogyny just being like part of the wallpaper.
Oh yeah.
Well, you kind of watch it, and like I said to you, it's like, oh, it's the id and the ego fighting, and then because the id is Eric, and the ego is our Cypher protagonist, and the super ego is
Zed.
Zoe. Yeah, Zed. So
Yeah.
and it's all very obvious.
Yeah. You had less of that in Love and a 45. In fact, I would argue that Love and a 45 is a little more feminist because Renee Zellweger's character is very active. Starlene, which is a great name.
Right. Good stripper
She's a
name.
very active character. She deals with, gross come-ons from her boyfriend's partner, and, she handles it.
Yeah. Also, watching Love in a 45, I'm like, this is the most Balzerko episode of Trailer Park Boys I've ever seen. So that's just what it felt like.
That would be.
I would, because it starts with like this like minor sort of inept heist, then just spirals out of control.
Yeah.
But anyway.
And Matt, I think you mentioned like disliking Love and 45, but like once I got past like the first 10 minutes, which was him
again, it's this overwritten character.
Yeah, like Gil fucking Bellows.
Huh?
Like handing out like life lessons to
From
this
the I Ching?
hapless teenage. Yeah, oh my god, when he's giving life lessons to this kid working at like, the Quick Mart or whatever.
Yeah.
But before he goes in there, you see him consulting the I Ching in his car.
Yeah.
It was really hard not to turn off the movie at that point. I was just like,
fuck off.
and then so he's basically he gives this kid a gun.
Yeah,
Baller.
because all
and
you
gives
need,
him like career advice. Maybe this is a little bit of like
like what
wish
Matt's saying.
fulfillment.
Yeah.
For some people in the audience, and I was like, "Oh my god, this movie's trying."
Or
my
what
patience.
Matt's saying, like don't be part of the machine, go be an individual.
Yeah, like fuck off with your gray one-dimensional man. I'm gonna be a rebel.
Yeah.
Just because. And the thing is, the 90s, it was like the 50s all over again. It was cultural stultification and sort of a sense of unearned contentment, and sort of it being very tenuous. It's the same kind of like that sense of like, everything being fat and happy, but then weird danger on the horizon.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah,
they wanted
'cause-
to they replicated all the style. So it's all like Gil Bellows is basically like James Dean, It's all very 50s intentionally.
That really was the feel of the 90s because, during the Clinton era, like you really had this growing awareness of, the specter of political correctness.
Mm-hmm.
And you saw other movies kind of pushing against that, like Demolition Man.
Oh yeah, where the PC police take over the whole world.
Exactly, and people don't even fuck anymore.
Yeah.
They have like VR sex, because VR was a big thing. So, so I feel like a lot of the movies were pushing against that very strongly.
Yeah.
And, we kind of have like obviously we have another wave of that now where people are like super mad about free speech on campus.
Well, yeah, I think part of it too is that the art is just going to reflect the time that,
exactly.
that it's made in.
Yeah, so you definitely had this kind of like cri de coeur against like the civilizing forces,
Right.
of PC and the man,
Yeah.
the man probably being Bill Clinton or something. I
I
don't know.
guess, yeah.
You saxophone playing asshole, shut the fuck up.
With your frigid bitch wife, fuck you.
I wonder whatever happened to her. Oh, well.
Nothing good.
What happened?
Yeah.
Oh! Well, I have this volume right here that'll explain it. Have you read it? You have to read it. You have to read this. You owe her this.
Ungrateful Bernie Bros. Putin, I see here. James Comey.
But anyway,
But yeah, so you were circling back to something about 10 minutes ago.
yeah, well, just kind of, putting our chosen movies in their context. So, and saying like, I got some enjoyment out of 11 to 45.
Mm-hmm. 11 to 45 looked like it was made for about $100.
Yeah.
I mean, like, my favorite scene is like the quote unquote Mexico border which is like we closed off a random highway. We stuck a sign by the side of the road that looked kind of like one of those border crossing signs.
They wrote Mexico on it.
Yeah. And, you know.
We got a Hispanic guy to play the border guy.
Yeah, we hired a day player. And then told Renee to ham it up.
Am I being unsisterly if I say that I just can't, like, I know Renee Zellweger, like, uses her sexuality as a tool at several points in the movie.
Well, all women do.
Apparently.
Yeah.
But I just can't see any guy going that crazy over Renee Zellweger, even though she's in short shorts.
What was the deal with that?
Also, that fucking dumbass driving the Brinks truck or whatever.
Yeah,
like,
armored car driver. It's like, have you not seen a woman before?
Yeah, I did not get the Renee Zellweger thing at all. She always just looked kind of weird.
I mean, she's certainly fine in the movie. You know, she does have, she is charming, but, you know, I don't really think of her as like,
Yeah.
you know, like, damn, what a dish.
Well, part of it too is, I mean, you know, Hollywood's always trying out, like, you know, this will be the next hit girl. Let's try that. Like I read an article, I don't know, years ago about just how there's a dearth of leading men just because, like, none of them have that quality.
Yeah.
And
That's
you know,
why we keep importing them from Australia.
Well, yeah, basically, like that's how you have, like, you know, like, I don't know, Ryan Phillippe or whoever, or like Taylor Lautner or whatever, and it's just like, yeah, this is the new it guy.
Yeah.
And just like, yeah, no, he isn't.
When do you think Harvey Weinstein hit on Renee Zellweger?
From the start of principal photography until the ADR sessions.
He used to fax women pictures of his dick.
Only 90s kids will remember this.
Yeah. Remember faxes, kids?
But yeah, like, I don't know. Like, she's fine. Like, Gil Bellows is fine.
Yeah.
He's a TV actor.
Yeah, he's got that low watt charisma.
Yes, that's exactly it. You know, made for the small screen.
Yeah, like Thomas Jane.
Yeah.
Like, they're decent actors. They just can't pull the focus the way that a movie star needs to be able to do.
Yeah. So, and you know, like, it kind of fits being like, you know, a small, cheap movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, about two small-time hoods who become like, kind of like tabloid celebrities in the vein of, again, only 90s kids will remember this, the Long Island Lolita.
Yeah, or Natural Born Killers.
Yeah, which, oh, and that was another thing that the director mentioned, like, he took heat for ripping off Oliver Stone. He's like, no, fucking Oliver Stone ripped me off because a guy working in Oliver Stone's office read my script and did coverage of it. And then he co-wrote Natural Born Killers with Oliver Stone.
Oh, I feel really bad for Won't Talk McStool Pigeon. What's his name?
Wait a minute. I thought that the script started off as a Tarantino script.
No, well, let me look it up.
Yeah, because Tarantino got mad because he didn't like Natural Born Killers. He didn't think it was an accurate representation of his original screenplay. But the original screenplay for Natural Born Killers was written by Quentin Tarantino.
That's what I recall.
Yeah, and I remember that there's this famous incident where he was fighting with Oliver Stone over the direction of the movie, and he brought him the Platoon board game, and they played it to try to break the ice. But at the end of the day, basically what it boiled down to is Oliver Stone's thing was, hey, I've been to Vietnam. I understand violence. I understand this stuff. This guy's a kid. He's just playing video games. He doesn't really have the life experience to know what the subject matter means.
Working in a video store.
Yeah, he's just some punk. Yeah.
From looking at this interview, I'm guessing what happened is that this guy who worked for Stone read Talkington's script and maybe, you know, internalized it. And probably what happened was that, you know, Oliver Stone got the Tarantino script for Natural Born Killers. Is like, no. Like, I gotta rewrite this.
Right.
Like, this
I've been a nom,
this punk
man.
kid wrote this script. Like, I'm gonna fix it. And he probably got this guy from his office, you know, who's credited as a co-writer. And that is where the Love and 45 Lovers on the Run.
Yeah, and the thing is, they both have the same. They have that retro aesthetic to all of their romantic scenes.
Yeah, which, you know, I remember Natural Born Killers taking that to an extreme with kind of like the sitcom flashbacks to Mallory's childhood.
Yeah, because, again, you see sort of, well, not an echo of that. I guess it prefigures that in Love and a 45 with the Crime Channel, which is, like, always on and everyone's always watching it.
Which is like, it's like a Sick Sad World from Daria.
Yeah.
You remember that? or like whatever the fuck Beavis and Butthead were watching.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, because you because you remember in like the 80s and 90s they had all those tabloid shows like Hard Copy and shit.
Oh, yeah,
American
Bill O'Reilly.
Maniacs with Ryan Gale.
And then what show was it that Bill O'Reilly got a start on?
It was Hard Copy.
Hard
Or no,
Copy.
Inside Edition.
Inside
Fuck
Edition.
it, we'll do it live.
Yeah, yeah.
Fucking thing sucks. Yeah, that.
Yeah, Wayne Gale. That was...
Live interview with Wayne Gale.
Whatever happened to that actor, I wonder.
I heard he went through some hard times and came out the other end stronger than ever.
Yeah. Oh. So, people have a good come from behind win.
But yeah, again, like I kind of want to emphasize that C.M. Talkington apparently like pulled a lot of things from the Zeitgeist, put it into his script, and he just had the misfortune to come along at the same time as this hot whiz kid, Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah.
You must hate that fucking guy.
Well,
Probably second only to Roger Avery of people who hate Quentin Tarantino.
Well, no, he's very complimentary about Tarantino because, again, like Tarantino has been very complimentary toward Love and 45. And I don't know, maybe like a portion of it is that thing that you do when you're on the periphery of an industry and you kind of don't want to speak ill of your quote unquote betters because, you know.
Yeah, that's the thing. He might get
know.
thrown some work or something.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to be the squeaky wheel.
Yeah. And, you know, but to tell you the truth, Quentin could probably do him like a bigger favor than just be like, hey, I like your
Seriously,
movie,
they'd be
bro.
like, you can put a blurb on the jacket copy of the book of the VHS
Yeah.
from it
No,
with my name
because-
on it.
You know what else? And this is something we talked about in the Mad Dog Time episode. Like, Quentin Tarantino will fucking produce
Anything.
a Larry Bishop movie,
Yeah, he
and he won't
produced
throw
that
C.M.
garbage.
Tarkington a bone.
He produced that. He gave Larry Bishop a nightmare film directing career,
Yeah.
and he couldn't give this guy one more shot. It's pretty sad.
Like, does Larry Bishop just get like Quentin like the most like primo feet pics or
Maybe-
something?
Well,
I
maybe
think
it's that
part of it is that
hierarchy again.
this goes back to his fetish on retro America and sort of that mode of rebellion. Larry Bishop is Joey Bishop's father, the guy from the Rat Pack. He's Hollywood royalty, and I think Tarantino's Hollywood fixation makes him be like, this guy, he's like a Merovingian prince. I need to fucking honor him by giving him the chance to make these terrible movies.
That's
Yeah,
true
because it's like, what does it help Tarantino to help...
Larry
C.M.
Bishop.
Tarkington.
Yes.
Yeah,
C.M. Tarkington.
nothing,
Like,
nothing that gets
what's
nothing.
Tarkington going to do for me? He can't do shit. But Larry
Yeah, I
Bishop.
can't. His
Yeah.
blood isn't an elixir against death the way that the blood of all real Hollywood royalty is.
Because it's true, like Larry Bishop really is like a literal relic.
Oh,
Of, like,
God,
not
total.
not just like of old Hollywood, but also of like the kind of trash cinema that Tarantino holds in great esteem.
Yes.
Yeah.
Having been gotten to start in like all those trashy biker flicks.
Yeah.
I mean, Larry Bishop really is the equivalent of something you see nailed to the wall of a Bubba Gump shrimp company. Just in terms of just like utter trash culture.
Yeah.
That someone is elevated for some fucking reason.
Oh, yeah. Trash culture, because that was also... Well, that's kind of an 80s thing, too. That's soft topic.
Well, you do get that elevation of the low to the high
Yeah.
in these movies, where it's like, and that is also a Tarantino thing, is like this incredibly crass low art is just as worthy
Yes.
as the frescoes of
And that is something that you can see across all cinematic movements in the 90s and beyond is to try to ratify juvenilia and say you don't need to have any kind of this highfalutin stuff. You can watch the shit that kids like and that is mass market garbage, but because you have an ironic knowingness of it, that's just as good as the high art stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just a way to launder people's laziness and intellectual immaturity.
And this led directly to Bronies and Gamergate.
Yes, it did.
Well, hey, and furthermore...
And it all did that. Indeed, it did lead to that.
Well, my friend...
and the unfortunate thing is, I mean, most people don't have a high enough IQ to really appreciate Rick and Morty.
well,
It's also got a Suicide Squad. That mindset led us
Oh,
to that.
yeah.
That mindset of the Joker being like a signal character in the Western canon. The Joker is now one of those beings that ratifies Western civilization. He's
Yeah,
that
like-
much of a
Cultural touchstone,
He's like
yeah.
she's like Falstaff or something. No.
Yes.
He's a stupid cartoon clown. Playing him does not require some sort of otherworldly transubstantiation
he's
to
not King
be
Lear
able
or
to
anything.
rectify, to be able to replicate that kind of otherworldly twistedness and evil. He's just an evil clown.
I don't necessarily subscribe to that Steven Pinker shit of like, hey, the world's getting better and like violence is falling away and we're becoming more civilized. However, for a significant proportion of people in the United States, those people are relatively untouched by violence and
Yes.
the chaos
And
of,
so they
of
can-
poverty
they
and
can-
whatnot. So, which is why they elevate these characters like
Yes.
the Joker, which is like, oh man, that's so fucking twisted. It's like,
Because they have a fixation on violence that they've never experienced, so it's just aesthetic and has no grounding in the real
Yes.
the real power of violence. It's just
Yeah.
a sick. It's just a sick.
Is it that same kind of 90s anti-hero thing? Because, Joker himself also kind of lives outside of the,
yeah,
cultural
because
bound.
cinematic violence is so utterly removed from real life violence.
Yeah. Except for when it isn't, then you're like, oh my God.
Well, yeah, because there certainly are movies that,
a lot of time it's stylized and, it's sexed up.
yeah, because, and again, like, it kind of goes back to Bonnie and Clyde as, like, one example.
Right.
Extremely stylized, beautified
Yeah.
violence, which is really not, like, real life at all,
Right.
or, like, and this is a trope which has been true of Hollywood since its inception, fist fights that go on for, like, minutes on end.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've seen a real fist fight, it's just, like...
It's just
grappling and
Yeah,
somebody
it's
threw a
the
punch, they break their
staggering-
hand.
It's absolutely clumsy and spastic, and people just kind of trip over each other. Nobody gets laid out with a single punch.
Yeah.
Like
There's
Julie
no,
Delpy
there's
and
no,
Killing
there
Zoe.
isn't that, there isn't that Indiana Jones thwacking noise when you punch somebody, like plop. It's
so
just a sad
disappointing, yeah.
slap of meat on fist. And
Yeah, it's like they're fight scenes that
your
are...
hand more than you hurt them when you punch
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
Like Indy's hand would have just been a bag of
Oh,
blood
God.
and bone shards.
Yes.
Yeah.
After like a few Nazis.
Would have been able to sign his name, yeah. Well, that's written for, like, expediency more than verisimilitude. I don't
Yeah.
know.
But again, like, that's the other, I think that's the biggest indicator of a Tarantino ripoff. The gold standard of Tarantino ripoffs is, do people point multiple guns at each other?
The Mexican standoff
Mexican
is
standoff.
a integral component of the Tarantino ripoff.
Yes, because it
With
happened,
guns held sideways.
Didn't they evoke that in The Simpsons? One of the cops is like, he's like holding his gun sideways. Oh, it looks cool.
Oh yeah, he
Yeah,
goes,
yeah.
yeah, can I do that, Chief? It looks so cool. And he goes, well, it is your birthday.
But yeah,
But
Mexican
yes,
standoff.
I'm trying to think of which ones have Mexican standoffs in them.
Was it Way of the Gun?
Immortals definitely does.
Yeah.
In fact, the whole ending is them all in a kitchen giving each other, pointing guns at each other. Which one do you say? Way of the Gun? They're all. There's
There's
a
a
lot of
fucking-
pointing guns at each other.
There's
but
a
That's hard to
fucking
say at this
hilarious one in High Voltage, which they talked about on Red Letter Media,
Yeah.
Best of the Worst,
Mm-hmm.
where it's literally like about 6 people pointing guns at each other, and then like Amy Smart comes in with a shotgun and points it at someone, and it's like, come on!
Wow.
yeah,
More guns.
It's like an Abram Zucker film at that point.
yeah.
Some idiot put a gun in the microwave.
I think Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. I haven't seen that in a long time, but I think Truth or Consequences, New Mexico has a Mexican standoff. One of the
Wasn't
worst
that a
ones.
vanity project?
Yes, Kiefer Sutherland directed it.
Ooh.
Because if it's in Mexico, it's just a regular standoff.
I bet he directed as well as Dan Aykroyd.
Wait a minute. He did not have the visionary, the visionary storytelling power. Nothing But Trouble is a fascinating film. It is so deeply and richly imagined.
In the way that,
Kiefer
like, the
Sutherland
Mooner
doesn't
Museum
have
is
a fucking
fascinating.
his shallow, ponderous, unoriginal Quentin Tarantino ripoff, Truth or Consequences in New Mexico, doesn't come close to the art of just the design for Judge Valkenheiser's face in Nothing But Trouble.
It's I think it was like my pre-Chapo listening days because we did an episode about Nothing But Trouble. It was me and friend of the show, Mike Rosenmolina.
Oh, I could talk about that all day. That's an amazing film.
That episode did go on forever.
Well, we had so much to say.
Yeah,
because it wasn't.
True. It was hilarious.
Well, it's one of those movies where it's like it isn't like utter trash, but you're confounded by it because you're like, I know you're saying something.
But why is Digital Underground here all of a sudden?
I don't know what the fuck it is, but you're trying to say something.
Why is his nose a penis?
That just a very memorable moment.
And it's a motif that recurs in the movie.
The nose keeps getting more penile. In case you didn't get it originally.
It's just Dan Aykroyd given free reign. But
yeah, anyway, no, I agree. Dan Aykroyd is definitely a greater visionary than Kiefer. Has Kiefer directed another movie?
I thought that I used to joke that he's sort of like Charles Lawton because he famously only directed Night of the Hunter, but apparently Kiefer Sutherland did direct one other movie even less significant than Truth or Consequences in Mexico.
That's too bad because I wanted to be like Night of the Hunter.
Yep, Truth or
Nothing
Consequences.
But Trouble.
Yep.
Truth or Consequences, New Mexico.
Yeah. That movie has the single most directly derivative Tarantino scenes, and that is Max Perlich gets tortured and interrogated by bad guy hitman Martin Sheen, and at one point he is beating him up while tied to a chair, and they're playing an ironically counterposed pop song.
Oh,
and you just think, oh, this is embarrassing. This is so obvious. Lee trying to ape that movie that you can't even look at the screen.
It's like I feel embarrassed for you.
Wow, like if you look up Truth or Consequences New Mexico, like the movie doesn't even come up like in the top searches. You have to add movie to it. And yeah, that was the thing that came up in 11 to 45 because you have the ear slicing dance in Reservoir Dogs. There is a moment in 11 to 45 when like the drugged up hitmen are like torturing his buddy, and then he does like a dance in front of him, and I was like, ugh.
Yeah, I guess that was just like it's like there's a bingo card of these things. Yeah. Like if you wanted to go back and watch 90s movies. Okay,
now I have to say that I will hand it to Sam Talkington for not necessarily being just a cheap Tarantino ripoff artist. Like, we made that point earlier. Now, Truth or Consequences in New Mexico, there's no fucking excuse because it came out in 1997. Mm-hmm. That's after Reservoir Dogs, after Pulp Fiction.
After Jurassic Park.
Well, after all those Tarantino tropes have been internalized, and It's like, well, let's just make a knockoff of that, because the kids love the shooting with the guns and the nihilistic violence.
Yeah. Let's do that thing that other people have expressed. Yeah. I mean, well, it's like, well, how can you call yourself a fucking artist? Yeah. Like, I'm just doing what other people do. Like, why are you here?
Well, and like the problem is, and I don't know. I mean, you could probably make a point about. No, I don't want to go there. It's too fucking obvious. But when you watch movies and you derive nothing from it but the stylistic elements.
Yeah.
When you're watching a movie and going like, that's so fucking cool. I want to make a movie that's fucking cool. And I feel like that was what happened with Killing Zoe. A little less with 11 to 45 because there actually is, there's a little bit of character stuff going on in that movie.
There's a unique voice.
Yeah, Gil Bellows is a character, Starling and her family, have like little, they're self-consciously wacky, but, they're characters.
Yeah, and there's also like a little bit of stunt casting because there's
Peter Fonda.
Yeah.
And he quotes a line from Easy Rider.
There you go.
But yeah, but, with Killing Zoe, it just feels like, I want to make a fucking cool-ass heist movie.
Well, the thing
where they talk about the prisoner before they do a job. They do a bunch of fucking heroin. It's so crazy. Like, wait till you see this fucking heroin scene.
Yeah, heroin just drug du jour of the 90s. And again, like, I forget if I already told the story, but I was taking Richard Walter's Intro to Screenwriting at UCLA, and he gave us this writing prompt about, like, you're I don't know, like you're an aspiring writer and your like suitcase gets switched with some other like big deal writer, and it's like, what's in the suitcase? And like and that's your assignment. And like I'm overhearing some student talking to another, and he's like, oh, it's got to be either cash or heroin. I'm just like, well, it was
No,
1997.
The twist is it's Stephen King's suitcase and it's full of cocaine.
Ah, see, that's the old twist. You don't see that coming.
What a twist.
By the way, the song, I looked it up. The song that they play while Martin Sheen cuts Max Perlick's fingers off in Truth or Consequences, New Mexico is It's My Party by Leslie Gore. See, you wouldn't, and I'll cry if I want to. See, it's irony.
Oh, yeah.
See.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I want to see a movie where somebody mutilates someone to the tune of It's Peanut Butter Jelly Time song.
That would rule. That would rule.
Anyway, a finger cutting scene was done better in Darkman anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Wasn't that the singer breaking scene?
Breaking,
Where he breaks
yeah.
his hands back?
There's finger
It's in the beginning when he's got a cigar cutter.
Oh, right, Larry Drake, yes.
Yeah. There's finger breaking in 11:45 too.
Yeah?
Where he breaks a couple of Peter Fonda's fingers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the key to all of it.
Whoa.
The finger breaking. The point that I wanted to make about Killing Zoe, and because it isn't just Killing Zoe where they're talking endlessly about the prisoner, there's plenty of other Tarantino just like pop culture diatribes, and I feel like this is kind of the genesis of hipsterdom, of just people pontificating just at length about like this one very specific like narrow piece of knowledge, and it's like to the point where like everyone's kind of got this one-upmanship about like just like their own particular like pet theory or interest, and like that fills in for I don't know, for like character or personality, but it's become so pervasive that everyone's got like I don't know, you could even have like a podcast or something about like these obscure awful movies.
It gave people a shortcut for appearing smart and informed. It said, hey, you know how it's socially valued to seem to be very knowledgeable, but that's difficult because attaining knowledge is tedious. Well, if you just take the pop culture crap that you are already obsessed with and organize your thoughts about it and your references to it, then just using those in conversation will make you seem very smart because you have a deep knowledge, even if it's just of this little thing that is just some shit that you watched on TV all the time when you were growing up.
Okay, now let me tell you my fan theory about the prequels in that case.
Well, it's very funny too, and again, proof that when you go back to Tarantino, you're like, shit, he does this stuff really well. You don't really think twice about the mundane dialogue about rails with cheese or whatever, because it seems very organic in a Tarantino
Yeah, it didn't
film.
have the. Well, that's just how he's able to make. He makes those super, super talky scenes filled with references, makes them feel as organic as they can. He heightens reality a little bit to match like the heightened dialogue, but the dialogue is still human enough. But these other guys, they just throw out these just deadly long fucking monologues. They really, and I think that like there aren't that many monologues in Tarantino because exchanging things feels more natural than someone just ripping off 200,000 words in a row and somebody's just standing there listening to them or something.
Yeah, because he does it a little bit at the beginning of Reservoir Dogs, where he's holding forth on like Virgin.
Yeah,
but
even he gets they intercut with him, and they're like Toby who, and they're like having their own conversations. It's like Dick. How many dicks is that? A lot. So it's interactive. What these other ones do is they'll just turn it into a monologue, like from fucking Shakespeare or something. It just grinds everything to a halt.
It prefigures the era of YouTube reviewers.
Oh God.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
They are a lot of the same. I mean, and that that aesthetic is very similar to the YouTuber in that it is this absolutely smug confidence when you actually don't know shit.
Yeah.
Just like a total, okay, let me give you the affect of someone who's very world-weary and very knowledgeable and very smart. But you're actually a dumbass.
I am the premier scholar of Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah.
Not only the games, but also the animated series.
Yeah.
Here's my unbelievably successful Patreon.
Yeah. By the way, does anyone want to read the review from the torrent of Love in a 45?
Oh, fuck.
Does anyone else besides me enjoy seeing a big-name movie star before they made it big? While this wasn't Renee Zellweger's first film role, it was certainly the first where she had a starring credit, and certainly a far cry from her more demure character in 1996's Jerry Maguire. It goes on like this.
Well, I guess she has at least one real big fan.
Yeah, it goes on for 4 paragraphs.
Yeah, so there's
Yeah.
we're looking at Renee like, who is being seduced by this woman, and there's one guy who has been very much seduced.
Oh, yeah, because at the end of this review, the guy's like, yeah, you don't see any of them titties, but she's wearing Daisy Dukes.
Yeah.
Like, all right, dude.
So if
And
those kind of things turn you off, then you'd be wise to skip this movie. Yeah,
I
thanks,
li-
Sick Boy
that
88.
That is 100% the indicator of a dumbass who shouldn't be reviewing movies when they and you see this all the time on IMDb reviews where it's somebody going like, well, if you're the kind of person who doesn't appreciate swearing and violence in your movies, you should probably move along. It's like, yeah, okay, so like we're not as fucking cultured as you.
Yeah.
Because we don't like trauma or where the fuck else it is, Like,
Or even still, like, I enjoy this movie. It's like, that's kind of the point. Like,
and the other end of the spectrum is, people in their 70s, like, also reviewing movies on IMDb who are like, I liked it better when, they didn't have cussing in movies. And, the women kept their tops on. Like, Rita Hayworth was so much more classy than Asia Argento. It's like, shut the fuck up. Is the movie good or not?
yeah. Again,
Like, I don't need, like, a moralizing lesson about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should get ready. Yeah, I think we gotta go.
Okay. Well, we're going to wrap up. Because
We have learned nothing.
We got
No, nothing has been learned.
we got places to do and things to be.
Yeah. We got a lot of ums and hemming and hawing of mine that we need to cut out of this episode.
But anyway, maybe just to wrap up, like don't fucking watch these Tarantino rip-offs. Maybe just go back and watch Jackie Brown or something.
Or watch our YouTube review to find out.
Click here to subscribe.
Yeah.
Matt,
Hey guys. it's
thank
us.
you. Matt, thank you so much for appearing. Shout out to Brendan James for providing equipment.
For
Yes,
executive
and
producing.
editorial expertise.
Yes,
Yeah.
equipment much better than the stuff we usually use on Have You Seen This?
Yeah,
Thank
we got
you,
3
Brendan.
audio channels. It's great.
Anyway, thanks again for listening.
Yeah.
Yes, thanks for having me.